What about if you had a mom who never used a filter on her Instagram? Like, I need my kids to grow up with someone wholesome.
I don't know. My mum never posted a picture on her Instagram ever.
Well, I mean, people's parents nowadays are like old, but people's parents in the future are going to be like internet natives.
Yeah, I'm not. My wife isn't going to have Instagram. I forbid.
You forbid.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. You should give her my number.
No, his reaction, in spite of the fact that he sounds gay, is exactly the kind of reaction that we should hope to see from the younger generation, because, you know, the smart people who grew up with this shit should be able to look at the internet and the pitfalls of the internet, especially social media, and they should, you know, cry out to reject it, both in their personal lives and in the, you know, social networks that they themselves form. And this should be a natural reaction to something that is obviously harmful from the first generation who was exposed to it without knowing it. Let's say, just say it's basically, it's digital asbestos, right? And these mesothelioma fucking sufferers of Gen Zer, hopefully will, you know, put up better insulation on the next generation. So,
well, they're doing as best as they can.
Hey,
I live in a community that doesn't really use the internet, and I'm happy with that situation.
Yeah, that's good.
Good.
No one else got my asbestos joke.
Oh, it was great.
I don't know. I don't know much about construction.
Yeah, no, I had that feeling. It's great because, you know, we can clearly see that this generation is rejecting, hopefully, to a greater degree, these pitfalls. You know, my advice to people is always keep your kids off the internet, keep your kids away from other kids. And that sounds extreme now, but it won't be extreme in the future.
Maybe it won't be extreme in the future, but you really want our future to be the kids don't get raised with other kids? You might as well not fucking have kids.
Why?
You don't get to grow up with other kids. Are you kidding me?
So what's the requirement to be an adult?
They don't need to be an adult. They need to be a kid with other kids.
Demonstrate to me. No, a child is a stage of development. And what is the ultimate goal for a child? It's to make them a functional, healthy, happy adult. And they don't need to learn how to interact with children to do that. They need to learn how to interact with adults to do that. So, no, I reject your same old tired fucking mantra of, oh, kids need to be around other badass kids. No, they don't. There's no evidence of that. Sorry.
Well, even if I could get to some commonality with what you're saying, it sounds like you're just sort of like giving into that there's not going to be trust enough to do anything any other way than what you're talking about. It doesn't sound like it was kind of selected for its merits.
Look, in spite of the dumb shit that you say for theatrics, you're a smart guy. Okay. So just think about it as risk mitigation. Let's say that there just is some benefit from being around other kids, even though there's really not. I mean, there's literally not. Because once you become an adult, you're just going to be an adult, right? Anyway, let's just pretend there is. Okay. Does the risk of being around children outweigh the benefit of being around other children? I can't see that it does. All of the bad things that you would protect your child from by not having them on the internet, they're going to be directly or secondhand exposed to by allowing them to be around other children.
That just sounds like doing dirt on the internet problem.
Yeah, but that's the point, is that you keep your kid off the internet so your kid doesn't see furry porn. Okay, great. Then your kid goes to school with somebody who's got shit fucking parents who does allow them to see furry porn, and they have a phone, and they're just going to show it to your child. How do I know? Because it happens all the time. How do I know? Because literally comes home and says, hey, these two kids were fighting in the bathroom, one black and one white. The black kid told the white kid, these are 9-year-olds, by the way. The black kid told the white kid, my dick's bigger than yours, and then pulled out a vape and started hitting it in the bathroom. And when he was confronted about it, the 9-year-old black kid says, oh yeah, I bought this vape from the 3rd grader who's a goddamn 8-year-old that's walking around selling the fucking vapes. So yeah, let your kid be around other fucking kids if you want to. Why?
But you can choose the community you live in order to avoid that problem.
No, you can't choose the community. What are you going to do? You're going to go to Amishville?
I basically live in an Amish-like community.
Okay,
yeah.
well, that's not realistic for most people, dude. So most people do have the ability to keep their kids away from other badass kids. It's just a matter of how much you want to. It's just a matter of what do you want your kids exposed to? What do you want them to know? If you're fine with them being exposed to all types of bullshit from a young age and you think that your morals and your values that you're instilling in them are going to override those influences, by all means, have at it.
Actually, Infinite, you know, I've talked before about like these hypothetical futures where people didn't need to work as much because robots took over the shit. The AI people I'm seeing are talking about the chip. Like it's not going to matter if you're NVIDIA anymore. Like that's getting commodified. There's nothing at the base of this technological stack apart from energy. And if that's true, I think you need to start asking yourself what it is about the modern life of the parents that they have to drop their kids off otherwise unattended to your school has the kids bring their phones and those phones all have internet. None of that shit is necessary unless you have parents that work for a living, and that's deadly serious. And I'm telling you, that's all changing.
Okay, I'm not even going to disagree that maybe that's changing, but I don't even think the kids need the phone if the parents are working for a living, and I definitely don't think you need to drop them off. Homeschool your fucking kids, and don't give your kids phones. That's right. You know, and if you are going to expose your kids to other kids, then it needs to be in very small, tightly controlled groups that are observed and that you know exactly who they are. And it needs to be for limited amounts of time for very specific activities. Not, I'm just going to go let my kids just hang out with other kids for hours at a time. And then you wonder why your kid, you know, comes home with a video of him playing with fucking Johnny's dick or whatever on his phone. Like, yeah, look, your kids are fucking weird. The internet is weird. And when you put those two things together, you end up with your kids doing some retarded shit. So, you know, it's on you. I mean,
so is there a path if the individual it's on you path leads to more of what we have? Is there a path to go to the country collectively and say we could all live managing our kids' internet until they're old enough to not have, you know, that it's not going to matter that they have this horrible shit? We could do that, but that's like a collective project, isn't it?
I don't think so. I mean, it could be a collective project, sure, but I think it's manageable as an individual project right now. I think it's just a matter of parents choosing to homeschool their kids or not. So
you were just going the totally opposite way with that, and you were like, "Listen, it's not reasonable to become the Amish." Well,
no, but it's not reasonable to become the Amish. But it is reasonable to homeschool your kids.
It's reasonable to homeschool your kid, but it's not. Let me put it this way: it's not reasonable for everyone to homeschool their kid. It's not even reasonable for enough people to homeschool their kid to make a dent in the education process.
Well, I mean, look, I don't know. Let me just give you a couple of statistics, okay? So these are not just statistics; these are just facts about homeschooling. So in Tennessee requires 4 hours a day for homeschooling. It requires 6 months a year, and it requires a test every other year, a standardized test every other year after 3rd grade. Okay, so your kid would have to take their first standardized test in 5th grade, and then 7th, and then 9th, etc. Okay, so you have at least 6 years that you can homeschool them before they even have to take a standardized test. And it costs $0 to do this. It is one piece of paper that you fill out, and I know because I did it with Gavin. So you don't have to send your kid to school from 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. when you're homeschooling them. Your child can go to school at any hours of the day that you want them to go to school, and you can use all types of activities that count toward homeschooling them. That doesn't just have to be sitting down and doing paperwork. And on top of that, the curriculum is incredibly cheap to come by, and the resources for learning online are amazing, especially compared to when I was doing it. So all of that being said, yes, the vast majority of parents, first of all, anybody who has a parent staying at home can absolutely homeschool their kids. So whatever percentage that is, they can all homeschool their kids. If you're working, there's several ways that you can manage that. You can manage it by having alternate shifts where one parent works on one shift and the other parent works on another shift. So there's always a parent with the kid, which means you can homeschool them whenever you want. You have parents that work from home, a lot of them, which means they can all homeschool their kids. So no, the amount of parents who can homeschool their kids is very high, actually.
Yeah, but the amount that you'd want to in the abstract or think it would be good for the kid, and the amount that would anyway of the ones that should, doesn't leave very much left over.
Wait, say that statement again. It was so you have such a retarded way of talking. Say your statement again.
I'll make it clear with examples. If Gizmo homeschools his kid, you're probably going to get a smart kid. I could homeschool the fucking genetically Christian kid, and you're still going to get a very smart kid. But if that fucking Christian homeschools my kid, you'll get a fucking retard. And even if you had people willing to do it poorly, probably like not enough will do it poorly. But of the ones who could do it competently, I think a lot of them are going to see value and are not going to do it, because there is like, I'm not going to do it entirely homeschool. I'm going to send my kid to actual kids that are in a school.
Okay, how do you define fucking retard in this context? And be serious. Don't say some silly shit. Give me an actual example.
There's not many creationists that make a dent in science these days.
Okay, lots of kids go to school and learn evolution, and they still are taught creationism, but they are smart enough to be able to do the work in spite of the fact that maybe their faith trumps what they are taught about evolution. That's not really a problem, especially if the parent is actually teaching the curriculum to the standards of the curriculum and the child is passing the standardized test. Moreover, when we look at this nation, we can see large swaths of the population. I won't point at which particular demographics those are, but I think you can guess, where we clearly see people who cannot pass standardized tests. For example, there's a school in Baltimore. It's called Achievement Academy. There was a recent news report where for 4 years in a row, they have not had a single student test proficient in math. 4 years in a row, not even one child. Okay. By the way, this report came on the heels of Baltimore City Schools that had 20 public schools in Baltimore that did not have a single student test proficient in 1 year. So why am I saying this? I can explain it too. We have a country of fucking idiots anyway. So the idea that there's going to be some creationist that's going to be created in a homeschooling environment isn't the worst outcome, because it's being offset by the fact that they're not exposed to the internet, they're not exposed to other kids, and all the pitfalls that come from bullying and gangs and fucking sexual shit and being exposed to whatever's on their phones. So I think that's better than someone being a creationist.
Yeah, well, I don't.
Come on, Gizmo. There's no way you don't believe that. You're telling me that you would rather somebody be a fucking gangbanger than a fucking creationist?
I don't think you're being like reasonable about why like a single family home that has to send their kids to, like, you don't even have the option between the single family home homeschools their kid versus you send them to here where the problems in the public schools have to do with the single family homes. And like whether there was a school to prison, like not a school to prison, but like, yeah, there might have been a school to prison pipeline for the previous generation of this kid. No, okay, that's a reality.
That's fine. But Gizmo, at the end of the day, you got kids that can stay home by themselves once they're 11 and 12 years old in most states. And
I'm just saying you're making a false choice. Like it were a real one.
I was just using the extremes. You said creationist, so I said gangbanger. Look,
that's fair.
I'm not saying that there's not pros and cons. I'm simply saying that I think the benefits outweigh the cons. And if you really think about it, and you really think about what kids are exposed to in public schools and what they can avoid being exposed to, and whether or not those kids are going to benefit from that long term, as long as they're getting socialization in other forms, because I don't think, obviously no socialization would not be good. But I'm actually much more keen on children learning to socialize with adults from a young age. Because I think part of the problem with adolescence and the way we raise children today is children first have to learn to be stupid fucking children. And then you have to beat that out of them to get them to be fucking adults. Well, why not just skip that phase and just go straight to being a fucking adult? Why not just teach children from a young age how to act like a man? I'm not saying they can't be emotional. I'm not saying they can't be loved. What I'm saying is, why do I need to take my kid through the phase of being a retarded brat and then teach them not to be? Why can't I just skip that? I'm just curious. What do you all think that like pioneering families did in the 1800s, for example? What do you think families did in the pioneering phase of America in terms of children being around and socialized as children? A lot of pioneers didn't have villages. Yeah, lots of times these families would live, I don't remember the exact statistic, but there's some statistic that told that most of these families, when they were born somewhere, that they didn't travel outside of a 25-mile radius their entire life of where they were born. It was some, it's some statistic like that. And, yeah, maybe they got together with other homesteads and things on at a town church or some place of worship or whatever. Sure. But what I'm saying is, we're not thinking about the fact that for most of human history, we didn't have to have children going to school with a bunch of other children. This wasn't a thing. The problem is that I think what most people miss about children is there's just nothing valuable to being a child. We think there is because we have good memories about our childhood. And I think you should absolutely give your child a good childhood. Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't be a child in the sense that they shouldn't experience things that children experience. For example, Christmas, their birthdays, those types of things. Of course, you absolutely do those things with your child. You entertain them with things that are, childlike and that they would enjoy. No problem. But what I'm saying is that the interactions and the expectations with a child should, let me just give a solid example. A solid example is people baby talk their children. Okay. They baby talk them from a young age, and then their children end up baby talking well past the age that they shouldn't. And what I've noticed from a lot of these single mothers is that when their children get in trouble or when they are in some type of distress, that their entire cadence in the way that they talk to their mother changes. And it reverts to this almost imitating baby talk, even at like 10, 11, 12 years old. Yeah, homeschooling your kids, do it. Don't make excuses. Don't send your kids around other heathens to learn to act like brats, which you then have to teach them how to act like adults. You will literally spend the ages of 15 to 18 telling your kid, why don't you grow up? That's what you're going to say to your kid from the time they're 15 till they're fucking grown, and probably past that for most of y'all, because you're going to raise fucking baby ass manlets. To So yeah, just skip that and teach them to act like adults from a young age. You're welcome.